So in saying that, do you think adults in mentorship positions, like basically trusted adults, doesn't necessarily have to be parents, but I think they would be included in that, but teachers and other adults that are coming in and out of these teens' lives. Do you think that we're doing a good job discussing consent, healthy relationships, warning signs with teens? What do you think we're missing? Because, even some of the things that you just mentioned about, social media and even just like tech literacy and things like that. Having your location, tracker on, sharing passwords, sharing information, through your phones and things like that, and even just tracking through social media. Like, are we doing a good job discussing the things that need to be discussed? And what do you think we're missing?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think things are slowly getting better in that we're starting to have these conversations more and more. The idea of consent is being spread more and more, is more commonly talked about. I would say that it's not nearly where we need to be. And especially on the idea of consent, there is some backlash against it. Louis C.K., famous comedian, is actively making fun of consent in one of his new bits. So that's not helpful as well. So there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
Some of the groups that are doing really good with this, there's a gentleman named Joe Campbell, and he works with hockey youth to talk about rejection resilience, to talk about masculinity, to talk about things, to talk about how gender plays out in the hockey world.
Yeah.
And so he's doing some interesting stuff. Next Gen Men is doing really good stuff on talking about positive masculinities, on how to move into some spaces and healthy behaviors for men, so that it's not just, or men and boys, so that it's not just moving away from, but what are we moving into? And they're doing great at encouraging moving into accountability and integrity and kindness. And then One Love Foundation also has really good positive messages as well around gender and informal supports specifically for teen dating violence and abuse. How do we talk to friends about these conversations? So those are ones that are slowly getting better. And then we can also, I think one of the most important things with consent is that we continue to educate and recognize that it's not even just about it can be connected to just sexual consent, can be often what it's conflated with, but it doesn't just have to be about that. That's an important aspect, but that can also be about with adults' expectations of let's say of children, right? And maybe you go over to your niece and nephew's house, and either the parent feels like they need to tell their child to give uncle, give aunt a hug, and maybe the child doesn't want to. Have we asked them, do you want to give a hug? If they say yes, great. If they say no, that's great too. And we don't want to force that, right? We don't want to force it. And so being able to practice consent from a young age, both asking and listening and receiving someone's yes or no is really important. And that's not something we do too commonly, but it's something that could be like an easy way to start practicing that gets away from the more complex part of sexual consent and the conversations around there.
Yeah, you really kind of touched into my next question there, in terms of what you were sharing in that, consent, and talking about consent and modeling healthy relationships, having discussions around healthy relationships really can start right away. I think, we don't have to wait until our kids are teens, before we can start having those healthy discussions around like what consent means. And I think, like you mentioned, it's important it's important to highlight that consent isn't just around sexuality. It isn't just around, sexual acts and things like that. It's, it's, it's all things really. And so, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You talked a little bit about some of the, really neat things that are happening in the communities with people taking on initiatives to engage, men, and boys, and what are your thoughts? I mean, and even, as a man, like, what are some of your experiences around what those talks around preventing unhealthy relationships look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we need to be interrogating our assumptions of masculinity, of gender, of what we've been told. If we've been told that we need to be too small or too big, if we've been told that we need to be too tough or too quiet, whatever those things are, that we want to ask, why do I think this way? Where did this come from? That we reflect on the stories of where we've heard it from. And then we've asked, like, do we think this is a thing that's a part of my authentic human experience? Do we think this is a thing that's helpful?
Right.
And so if we can do that, especially if we're in that space of maybe we've been harmed before, or maybe we've hurt somebody that we care about and we didn't mean to, and we know that most of the people in our lives don't think we're like that. They think we're a good person, that we're kind. It's possible for many people to think that we're good and kind, and for us still to cause harm. Both of those things can exist. And so if we're doing that, and we're not listening to people in our lives, and they're telling us this isn't okay, we want to listen to that and believe people. So we have to interrogate those stories, ask ourselves where these behaviors are coming from, ask ourselves, are there any tools or any ways that we can do work on ourselves so that we can figure out how to get to the solution of those problems. And in doing that, I think that we can also hold space to be accountable, to provide support and accountability with one another, right? As we know that these conversations are messy and hard, that gender stories are no one in particular person's fault, and we still have responsibility for the things that we act out of those things, right?
Right.
And so are we willing to open ourselves up to others in our lives that we trust, not just everybody, but creating those spaces of accountability so that we can find healing, so we can find generative ways of being, so that we can move into healthy relationships, so that we can move into relationships with ourselves where we see ourselves and be like, this is who I want to be.
Right.
Because I imagine for most of us, if we are acting not out of a place where we want to be, if we are hurting people we care about, whether just like a reaction, just automatically, like we don't know, that's probably not what we're looking for ultimately. And so having these conversations can help us get to maybe that space of where we're moving into the kind of gender expression that we'd like to be.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Trev.